Entry 26 now. This is Tuesday, May 5th, 1964, and we have another long discussion about the Dallas reenactment. Tell us about that.
Yes, we were, the staff was, of course, very strongly supportive of reenactment effort by the Secret Service and the FBI. And Rankin was prepared to support such an effort, but was making his own decision about when to solicit the agreement of the Chief Justice. And just to provide some color with respect to this continued discussion, referring to a meeting in which Mr. Rankin, David Bellin, Redlich, Norman Redlich, and Mel Eisenberg were present. Bellin, Redlich, and Eisenberg all being important contributors to this proposal. Quote, most of the discussion centered about the need to return to Dallas for further investigative work to decide upon approximations of the distances and locations of the various shots. Mr. Rankin had not yet put this matter to the Chief Justice for decision. Mr. Bellin expressed his strong view that our record on the firearms testimony, particularly as to the amount of time within which the shots could reasonably have been fired by Oswald, was not as good as we might have desired. In fact, Mr. Bellin stated that after reading our record on this subject, he was inclined to believe that Oswald did not fire the 3 shots within the 5 1/2 second limitation. Mr. Eisenberg, of course, took issue with this to some extent and stated that he believed that the testimony did show that it was possible for Oswald to have fired the 3 shots, although it would have been a difficult assignment for someone with Oswald's degree of marksmanship. Mr. Bellin desired, and I concur, that further testimony on this subject be elicited, particularly if the Dallas project is completed and produces some new facts, which would be the basis upon which to conduct some additional tests. End quote. This indicates that the timing issues had been identified early on, and the criticism about and debate about whether Oswald could or could not have handled this effectively, of course, was never completely resolved. If in fact we had been able to determine that the first shot missed, then there would have been no serious discussion about timing, because then the 2 shots that had impact on the occupants were at the end of this 5 1/2 section interval. So we were waiting for Rankin to get a decision from the Chief Justice, and he managed to get that a couple days in the future.
The 5 1/2 second time span, that's a really short period, I mean, compared to most of the approximations that I've read in years since, which allow for at least 6 seconds or so, for all the way up to 8 seconds for the entire shooting to take place. It's interesting, Bellin's comment, thinking that it could be better. The timing could be better, because I know that when the House Select Committee was testing the activation of the bolt, they were able to cut it down significantly from what the test done by the commission had done, which allows even more time for the rifle to be readied and aimed and so forth. I think it's worth noting, with regard to the single bullet theory, that a big problem was where the bullet went through Kennedy's throat, because it passed through the soft tissue of his neck, and the bullet's got to go somewhere. And so the reasonable explanation, and I'm not sure who it was that officially came up with that notion, but went forward into Governor Connolly, because where else would it have gone? Is that kind of how it came about?
Well, we're right. That's absolutely the basic question that any critic has to answer. And particularly Dr. Wecht, being a principal opponent of the single bullet theory, really never answers the question. It was put to him by Bugliosi during the moot court conducted in London in 1986, where Bugliosi was the prosecutor and Mr. Spencer, a very well-known defense attorney, represented Lee Harvey Oswald. And when Wecht was testified about this and explained that why he thought it was a magic bullet, Mr. Bugliosi cross-examined him to explore this further, and asked him, well, what does Dr. Wecht think happened to the bullet that exited from the of President's throat, and Dr. Wecht said, I don't know, I didn't conduct the investigation. So in short, he didn't have any answer, and Bugliosi was able to argue effectively before the jury, because he prevailed in the prosecution, that it was not the commission that had the magic bullet, it was Dr. Wecht. So anyway, we did go forward with the reenactment, but the issues that are outlined in the journal are the kinds of discussions we were having on an ongoing basis about efforts to deal with the most controversial issues in the investigation, and timing, for better or worse, was one of those issues that we had to deal with.
Yeah, the precision was necessary in this case because there had been so many questions raised about the sequence, and the Zapruder film provided for so many this timing sequence of the assassination, during which time all the shots needed to have been fired, even though there have been subsequent theories suggesting that maybe a shot was fired before the film started. The third paragraph on this page, in this one-page note, it goes back to the presidential protection topic, and we see Mr. Stern preparing something of a formal letter for Secretary Dillon. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, this was the result of the various discussions that had proceeded, that we've considered, and the fact that Secretary Dillon had effectively prevailed in discussions with the President, so that the Commission was not going to receive some of the detailed information, including specifically the Rowley report, as a way of elaborating on what had been done and what might be done in the future to improve presidential protection policies and procedures. So Sam Stern was undertaking to work with Mr. Carswell, with whom he had a professional relationship, to work out a means by which questions might be put and information supplied by the Department of the Treasury that might advance the Commission's needs modestly. And so Sam was very good at trying to work those problems out, and I think did yield some useful material, but we were still being, I thought, denied important material, and that limited our capacity to deal with presidential protection. And to some extent, I can understand the concerns of the Department of the Treasury at the time, and certainly the Commission really didn't have the expertise or judgments about major issues such as transferring operations from one government department to another.